just to narrow the scope for a second, how did you become become friends, but initially meet your first connection with the KKK?
Sure. Okay. So jumping off that point, at that age, I formed a question in my mind, which was, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? And for the next 52 years, I've been looking for the answer to that question. So lo and behold, I graduate college and I'm a professional musician. I'm playing in a country western band. Country music had made a resurgence. And so all the clubs around here, if you wanted to work full time, you played country. Country music is fine. I know how to play country. Country music is no different than the blues. It's the same 3 chords. So I joined this country band that was pretty established in the area. And we played a place in Frederick, Maryland called the Silver Dollar Lounge. Silver Dollar Lounge was known as an all-white bar lounge. Now, when I say all-white, I don't mean that Black people could not go in. What I mean is that Black people did not go in by their own choice. It was a good choice because they were not welcome. And when you go somewhere where alcohol is being served and you're not welcome, it's not a good combination. So the band had been there before. It was my first time in there. We played a set, took a break, and I'm walking across the dance floor to go sit down with my bandmates. And I was the only white guy in the band, only white guy in the bar. And a white gentleman came up to me from behind, put his arm around my shoulder. And I don't know anybody in there, so I'm turning around trying to see who's touching me. And he says that he really liked, the music. And this was the first time that he'd ever heard a Black man play piano like Jerry Lee Lewis. Now, I was not offended, but I was rather surprised that he did not know the Black origin of Jerry Lee Lewis's piano style. And I proceeded to inform him that Jerry Lee got it from the same place I did, from Black blues and boogie woogie piano players. That's where rock and roll, rockabilly came from. Well, he didn't believe me. I said, look, man, I know Jerry Lee Lewis. He's a good friend of mine. He's told me himself. He didn't believe that either. But he was so fascinated with me, he wanted to buy me a drink, wanted me to come back to his table and talk to me. So I went back to his table, had a cranberry juice, he paid for it. He took his glass and he clinks my glass and cheers me. And he says, this is the first time I ever sat down with a Black man and had a drink. Now I'm totally mystified because, I had sat down with thousands, I'm not exaggerating, thousands of white people or anybody else.
Listen, Mr. Daryl, I got to take a break. Hold it right there, okay?
Okay.
Because I got to get some popcorn.
I got
to get some chips for the rest of this story because I'm all yours. I want to hear how this turns out. Listen, everybody, get your snacks. We'll be right back. Mr. Daryl's not done. I want to hear how this turns out. How the hell did this happen? We'll be right back. I asked him before the break, how did he come to meet his first friend who was also a member of the KKK? And he was in the middle of telling us that story. Mr. Davis, you keep right on going.
Okay, so the guy had said this was the first time he ever sat down and had a drink with a Black man. And I was mystified. I couldn't believe that. And so I asked him why, and he didn't answer me. He looked down at the tabletop, didn't say anything. I asked him again. He still was silent. So his buddy elbowed him, was sitting next to him, said, tell him. I said, tell me. I'm just curious. And he looked back up at me just as plain as day and said, I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan. I burst out laughing at this guy because I didn't believe him. I know a lot about the Klan. I know a whole lot about the Klan. And, they don't just come up and embrace a Black guy, want to buy him a drink and hang out and praise their talent and something like that. So I think the guy's, pulling my leg. So I'm laughing. He goes inside his pocket, pulls out his wallet and hands me his Klan membership card.
They have cards.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I didn't know this.
Yeah. You remember, you get a card, you pay your dues. I looked at this thing. I recognized the Klan emblem, which is a red circle with a white cross and a red blood drop in the center of the cross. I realized this thing is for real. So I stopped laughing. I gave it, it wasn't funny anymore. So I gave it back to him. And we talked about the Klan and some other things, but the guy was very friendly, very friendly.
Okay, yes. Mr. Davis, stop for a second, right? I want you to continue, but I got to ask some questions in here. Mm-hmm. All right. So when you get the card and you realize he really is a Klan member,
yeah,
what's the first thing that pops in your mind, and then how do you feel?
First thing that popped in my mind was when I realized it was real. Was why am I sitting here? Why is this guy inviting me to the table? Why is he being like this? And but like I said, he was very friendly, very inquisitive, because he had never been exposed to a Black man who could do what he thought was white music.
So what did you feel? Did you feel fear, rage?
No, I didn't feel. No, I didn't feel rage at all. I didn't feel fear at all. I felt like, this guy needs to be educated, and he needs some answers because he's lacking something. He needs exposure, and so I'm here to give it to him. And so, he wasn't attacking me. I mean, he was betraying his ignorance, and I don't say ignorance in a derogatory manner. I say it in totally uneducated, unaware of. And ignorance can be replaced by education. We all are ignorant to some things to a certain degree. And so I had answers that he didn't have. He may have some answers to things of which I may be ignorant about. So we talked about the Klan and some other things. And we had a friendly conversation. He gave me his phone number. He wanted me to call him whenever I was to return.
He gave you his phone number.
He gave me his phone number whenever I was to return to this bar with this band, because he wanted to bring his friends, meaning his Klansmen and Klanswomen friends, to come see this Black guy who plays piano like Jerry Lee Lewis. That just fascinated him. I was a novelty. But I can tell you this in no uncertain terms. Had I gone into that bar by myself as a non-musician, just to go hang out, hear music and dance, I probably would have had to fight my way out. I'll guarantee you that.
Mr. Davis, I was just about to ask you, or say to you rather, that, where you find one Klans member, you probably have another 20 in the room.
Right. And I met a bunch of them, over time. And so now, not all of them were cool, calm, collected, and friendly. I've had my share of violence. Fortunately, those incidents happen few and far between. But I wrote a book. I wrote the first book written by a Black author on the Ku Klux Klan from the perspective of sitting down face to face and interviewing them. I traveled around the country, up north, down south, Midwest, West Coast, interviewing Grand Dragons, Imperial Wizards, and plain, old Klan members to get their perspectives. Some would talk to me, some would not talk to me, some wanted to fight with me, and all that kind of thing. But overall,
Mr. Day, I'm sorry to cut you off. What have you learned from talking to them?
Okay,
hold on one second. That would surprise all of us to hear and to learn what you've heard.
What I've learned is this: a missed opportunity for dialogue is a missed opportunity for conflict resolution. Listen, when we all were kids, we all heard the adages: a tiger doesn't change his stripes, a leopard does not change his spots. So why would anybody think a Klansman would change his robe and hood? It would change their ideology. Well, here's the difference. A tiger and leopard were born with their stripes and spots. A Klansman is not born with his robe and hood, or Klanswoman. Nobody is born racist. That is a learned behavior. What can be learned can become unlearned. And as a result, I have gotten a multitude of Klan robes and hoods. Here's a Klan robe of an Imperial Wizard. That's the symbol I was telling you about right there. This is the robe of an Imperial Wizard. And of course, this here is what's called the hood. And this is the hood, this is the mask. The mask is attached by 3 snaps or Velcro. If they don't want their identity exposed, they wear the mask, they look at you, they see you, you don't see them. If they don't care about their identity, they unsnap the mask, pull it off, and the face is exposed under the hood. I have over 50 of these robes and hoods by people who are active members who have renounced that ideology since coming to know me, and we've become very good friends. Some of them come out with me when I give lectures and stand on my stage and testify and renounce that ideology.
So their views of Black folks and other so-called minorities fundamentally change because of their ongoing interactions and dialogue with you.
I've been the impetus for that. Yes, for over 200 of them.
Wow. I was just about to ask you, and matter of fact, I will ask you this. Beyond what you've said, right? What you said about the benefits that happen for them. I'm wondering tonight, what is it about this work? What does it do for you? What does it allow or give birth to in you, independent of what it does for them?
What it does for me is it encourages the optimism and hope that I have for this society, for our country. Listen, any society, your society, my society, your city, my city, whatever, our country can only become one of two things. One, it can become that which we sit back and watch it become, or it can become two, that which we stand up and make it become. I've chosen to stand up and make my country become what I want to see, not sit back and see what it becomes. And so in seeing people change, it gives me the encouragement and hope that this can and will happen.
Yeah, you know, your perspective on it is so interesting, because the common cultural perspective nowadays among a certain generation happens to be racism is white people's problem, hating black people is white people's problem, and white people need to learn and go figure that out. It's not my job to teach you. It's not my job to educate you. If someone was on tonight saying that to you, what would you say to them?
I would say that you're probably a hypocrite, and I'll tell you why. Because often I hear that all the time. Listen, I have my share of supporters and I have my share of detractors. I know it works. I just showed you a Klan robe. I can show you 50 more if you want to see them. All right. But here's the point. Those people who say it's not our job to teach them, listen, it's everybody's job to teach people what they don't know, especially if you've been oppressed. We've been in this country now for 402 years. We arrived here in 1619. That's 402 years ago. And we're still being oppressed 402 years later. Perhaps you need to teach your oppressor how to treat you. If you're still being oppressed for 402 years, maybe it is your job to teach them. And the same people, okay, the same people who say it's their problem and don't want to waste their time teaching them, those are the same people who march up and down the street in front of a police station, yelling and screaming in a bullhorn about these white cops shooting black people and telling them to stop and we want equal justice. What are you doing? You're teaching white people how to treat us. You're teaching those white police officers how to treat black people when they stop them. Okay, what's the difference? I'm teaching people who wear robes and hoods. You're teaching people who wear uniforms and badges. They're still white. What's the difference?
And it's a very interesting point. And I have to admit, I find merit in the idea that if somebody hasn't quite figured out how to do it after 400 years, they might be incapable of completely doing it on their own.
Precisely. Now, see, you put it better than I did. That's why you're a doctor and I'm not.
There's some merit to that. Listen, let me ask you a question, because you're totally riveting, sir. I absolutely find the way you are, the way you think and how you narrate to be riveting. And I cannot help but ask you this question. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, of course, they rounded up all the leaders of the insurrection on January 6th, right? Mm-hmm. And they said part of your punishment or part of your rehabilitation is you have to talk to Daryl Davis, right? And they were all in the room with you. What would you say to them?
Okay, well, first let's understand one thing, and I've said this for a long time. I've been doing this for 37 years, but the people who did the insurrection 25 minutes from where I'm sitting right now, 2 weeks ago, those were Trump supporters. And I said this a long time ago. I said it when he was running for president the first time. I said, not all Trump supporters are racist, but all racists are Trump supporters. You know, I would say probably 35, 40% of my friends are Trump supporters. I'm not, but they are, and they're not racist. You know, they have some idea about Trump being a good businessman, and they wanted a businessman instead of a politician, you know, to fix the economy, and on and on and on. And they would never associate with neo-Nazis and the KKK and so forth and so on. You know, they don't associate with that.
But Mr. Davis,
but they support a racist.
Yeah, that's my point. That's my point. I find it that argument becomes specious to me when all the racists support the guy that you support. But let's narrow, because I'm running out of time. Mm-hmm. Let's say we found all the racist followers of Trump, mm-hmm. and we put them in a room and you had a chance to talk to them. What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, I'd find out how they came to this idea of being superior. And then I would break it down for them, as I've done for 37 years. There will be some people who will go to their grave being hateful, violent, and racist, and there's no changing them. But if they're willing to sit down and have a discussion, there is the opportunity to plant a seed. And the idea is to come back and water that seed to make it bloom. And I will guarantee you, in the 37 years of my experience, I can do it. I can get the majority.
No, Mr. Davis, I thoroughly believe it, but I'm going to push you a little bit.
Go ahead.
Because I'm very interested in knowing specifically, I hate to call it curriculum, but what is it do you say to them that helps them deconstruct their world?
A racist is not stamped out of a standard cookie cutter any more than Black people are stamped out of. We all are individuals. So you have to find out why they joined. Is it because their family was in it? Is it because they got beat up by a Black guy in school? What is the reason for joining or adopting this ideology, whether you join a group or not? That's what you need to find out, and that's what you have to address. So it's all on an individual. I meet them one-on-one. And sometimes I talk to groups. I've even been invited to Klan rallies and meetings to speak to them.
Wow.
And I've done that, yeah. And some of them have come out.
Well, listen, I'm out of time, but if I had more time, I would pull more out to ask. So what after you know why they've joined, what do you say next?
I find out what their agenda is for the future. What are they looking for? And I find commonalities. You find common ground. You start off this far apart at opposite ends of the spectrum. But the more you talk, the more you find you have something in common. And the gap is closing. You continue talking. Now you develop a relationship with them. All right.
Yeah.
And you continue talking. Now it's a friendly relationship. And you find out when two enemies are talking, they're not fighting. They're talking. They may be disagreeing, but at least they're talking. It's when the conversation ceases that the ground becomes fertile for violence. So you want to keep the conversation going. And by the time you get right here, you found a lot of commonalities. You found more in common than you have in contrast. And the trivial things you have in contrast, such as your skin color or whether you worship at a church, synagogue, mosque, or temple, begin to matter less and less. And that's when they're on their way out.
Mr. Davis, regrettably, I am out of time, but that is a perfect place to end it. Almost poetic, by the way. Thank you for that.
Thank you for having me.
No. You have got to come back and talk to me some more.
I would love to.
I want to talk about next time when you come back, because you're coming back. Let's go more in depth in some of the strategies, and then let's have a conversation about what you see about the future and how we can go forward.
Absolutely,
what will make this work. And then next time you come, I'm gonna push you a little more and really challenge you about how people think that this work is a waste of time. Your response tonight was a brilliant answer. Because here's what I got from, then I gotta shut up. You're saying to everybody watching, if you're teaching Klansmen one-on-one on how to treat Black people and how to be better human beings, how's that different from what protesters are doing out in front of a police department that are setting boundaries and limits for how white people treat us? It's a very salient point. And sir, all I can do is thank you.
Because they're calling the cops white supremacists too, right?
Yeah, that's right. Listen, we're gonna have you back. Mr. Daryl Davis, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.